time that we needed you. Everyone is here to see you move. We winning, we winning, we winning. We put the world on the way. And every time you're swinging through the city, you are saving the day. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mike Muse Show. I'm so excited you have joined us for another episode. This one I am extremely excited to be in conversation with. As you know, I intersect politics and pop culture, getting policy through lifestyle, through sports, music, film, fashion, and technology. But listen, there is no better way to discuss social constructs than through film. I am a big lover of film. I love the movie industry. I've been going to see movies and films since I've been a little kid. I've dreamed of being a superhero for a very long time. I haven't quite made it. I know they don't wear capes, but maybe they can start wearing denim jackets. I feel like I'm always wearing denim jackets. As you know, that is my thing. That is my hook. And I love just the way film and movies really moderate national conversations and national discourse. And listen, as you guys know, I was at the Oscars for my second time. A little lightweight flex. I'm super excited for that. And I had the chance to see my next guest receive his Oscar. And it was a moment. It was a moment for our history. It was a moment for our country. It's a moment for film. And it's a moment for me to actually have him in conversation with me today. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, enough of me, more of him. The Oscar-winning director, Peter Ramsey. What's happening, Peter?
Hey, how you doing, man?
It's so good to meet you again. But I have to say, I did see you at the Governor's Ball, though, after you
That's
won.
Right.
So.
Our big-time Hollywood moment.
Yeah, we're very fancy right now.
I don't know if I can live up to your intro, though.
Yeah, exactly. And you won Best Director for the film. For people who may not be aware of it, is Spider-Man Into the SpiderVerse. Mm-hmm. So congratulations to you for that one. I have to say, Peter, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't bring the Oscar statue here with us right now. And so
they had to pry it out of my hand because it wouldn't get through security at the
it doesn't look heavy, but I feel like it's heavy statue.
That thing is heavy. I mean, when you first pick it up, like all those awards, they make them all really heavy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but it's got some heft to it.
Now, how long did you ever let go of it at all throughout the night, or did you take it all the way to all your other parties you went to?
You know, they have this thing where it's supposed to be that you can get into any party if you have that Oscar and you just like wave it around, and it's supposed to be, oh, come right in, sir.
Yeah.
But that's not really true.
Okay.
It's not true with the Jay-Z party.
The gold party.
Mr. and Mrs. Jay-Z. I'm just telling you right now, if you have Sirius XM.
Yeah. Well, I know someone's connected with them who is listening to the Mike Muse Show on a regular.
I hear it was a nice party.
Yeah. So S. You hear what's happening right now. We got to make sure Peter gets in next year. I have a plug for you.
Oh, there you go.
The only exchange is that you put the Mike Muse Show in your next universe. That's all that I ask. Right. I become animated.
Hey, man, you're in.
Spidey goes and does some interview or something, man. How did you even get to do the film Spider-Man Into the SpiderVerse? How did that come about?
How did I get here? I had done another movie a few years back, Rise of the Guardians, for DreamWorks Animation, and I think around the time when SpiderVerse was just starting to kick around, I was actually working on another project with one of the producers of SpiderVerse, Avi Arad. Avi has been a producer on a ton of Marvel film stuff. But this movie that we were working on, as so many movies do, it kind of fell apart in the development stage.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that SpiderVerse was just getting going, and my very good friend Bob Persichetti had come on as director to that project, which was being produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who've done 21 Jump Street and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs in the Lego Movie. Mm-hmm. So I got a call from Bob, and then a separate call from Avi, and I said, hey, come aboard Spider-Man, because we're going to need some more help.
Yeah.
And I ended up coming into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And it was, I had known Bob from DreamWorks Animation, so we were a really good team. And we got a third director, Rodney Rothman, who started on our movie as a writer, and we realized, we were moving at such a speed and our story needed so much work that we were like, we got to get this guy in to make sure he doesn't leave. So let's make him a director. And the three of us kind of from that point, it was probably a year and a half into our 3-year schedule. We just kind of hit the ground running and just didn't stop till the end.
So at what point during this process did you guys want to make it as multicultural as it is and to have that lens?
Right. That was right from the beginning. When Phil Lord and Chris Miller were first approached by Avi Arad and Amy Pascal about making an animated feature film, they said, on one condition, that we can do it about this version of the character, about the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man, who was created in, I think, 2011 by Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli in the comic books. And Miles was kind of the first of this new wave of all these alternate versions of iconic characters that we know, or you'll see like a female version of the character, or like a character of a different ethnicity, or it's just kind of exploding the whole world of superheroes into a new realm. And so that it was the idea of that kind of diversity was baked into the idea already. And I think what we did was introduce it to just a wider audience, to introduce Miles Morales and kind of tried to present his story with as much authenticity and kind of honestly love and attention as we could.
Yeah. My audience knows that I actually prefer talking to directors over actors because I get the chance to talk about the decision points, right? The intentionality of it. And I wanted to have that conversation with you about the intentionality of making it as multicultural and diverse as it is, because now we're in this space in our society of D&I, diversity and inclusion, and sometimes we forget the inclusion part, right? A lot of times we just grab the diversity for diversity's sake, and that's what it is, but we forget to make it inclusive and make it authentic to the story. As I was watching the film, I actually got lost in it, right? And I actually forgot that it was in this animation realm and this world because of how authentic Miles' character was. Like his movements, his mannerism, the tone, the slang, the use is exactly how me and my friends actually talk and engage, right? And so how did you guys make sure that the studio execs and all those working on the production maintain that authenticity throughout the entire moment of the film?
We were very lucky in that we were in a situation where the studio trusted our producers, Phil and Chris, almost absolutely. And they it was kind of a situation where they could say, you know what, follow your gut, do what you have to do, make this different and bold, and make the audience fall in love with Miles. And we had free reign as creators to do what we thought we needed to do to make the story as expressive and as real and as affecting as possible. And a huge part of that for us was saying, let's try to make the movie feel like it actually feels like to be in Brooklyn in our time right now, 2019, not as a cutesy, idealized version, but what is it actually like? What would a kid like Miles be listening to? What would his hair be like? What would their apartment be like? What part of town would they live in? All these different decisions that just come from observation and study, from our own experience of knowing people from our lives, how we relate to family members. All those things kind of went into the pot, and just it was the really heartening and truly moving thing for me was being on this crew. We have like 800 people total working on this movie, and you're not actually seeing all 800 of them at a time, but there so many people working on this movie, and all of them cared so much about getting this right, because I think everybody understood what it could mean. The response has been overwhelming, and I don't think we saw the depth of that, but we knew what it could mean to kids and to adults watching this film that hadn't seen a character like this before. So everybody really wanted to give their all to make it as authentic and as closely observed as possible.
I mean, and you nailed it, and I think that's so important. And now we're in this conversation of representation, right? Representation matters, and what it really feels to feel like you can see yourself in that space and that place. And growing up, I would read the comic books, and I would see the animation. I would see the Batman, the Superman, the Spider-Mans, but I have to be honest with you, there's only certain animation that I would actually run to. The only one that I really enjoyed was Batman. Full disclosure. I've never enjoyed Spider-Man, right, or Superman, and no shots fired, great pop, but just for me, right, I couldn't see a connectivity with me, right? I couldn't see my connectivity of this white guy in this press room, right, as a journalist. We didn't even see black journalists at a time, and so there was such a disconnect for me, but there was something about the dark cloak and veil of Batman, right, of like the way the car avatar was created, the way he looked and the way the costume looked, and I think just the color black I was gravitating to as well. And when I saw within Miles and how you created the world of the music, and when the Biggie song came on, like you pulled me in immediately into that. And when you're talking about like the hair, right? Like although I'm gone now and I'm completely bald, as you can see, there was a time though, Peter, when I had this incredible hair.
Mine's going gray, so I know what you mean.
But it was all those things that hooked me in, and the experience I got from watching this incredible animated film and the sensory, the color, the styling of it, I felt like I had been missing out for so long as a full-grown man, right?
I know exactly what you mean.
But it was because of that. And so can you talk about how that reaction is, how it's been for you, and how should Hollywood begin to look at that, right? Because I'm now completely bought into animation with
fantastic.
the hope that it's more representative like that.
For us, you know, for us, it was sort of like, it felt obvious. It felt like there are so many people in this world like Miles Morales. The weird thing is that you don't see it more, not that you see it. You know what I mean? It's not it's we live in this kind of situation where everything is inverted because there are so many like biracial of whatever race or multilingual, whatever characters or people, I should say, out in the world. That's just walking down your street. That's just reality. But somehow the conventions of storytelling have evolved in our culture where it's just become this very limited range for, number of reasons. Of we all know the reasons. But so that when you actually see it, it feels, wow, fresh, new, innovative. But it's really just the way the world is.
It literally is. And the reason and how black and browns coexist together, right? Like
exactly.
The whole notion of the platinum and collard greens, right?
Yeah.
Like there is this togetherness, right? This complementary and this coupling of it. And I'm actually from Michigan and from Lansing, Michigan, and you don't really see it as often there just because of the way migration and immigration kind of works. But living here in New York City, the coexistence of it, right? Everything. And then especially when you look at Dominican culture, right? And the population and the color range, right? It's just like my brothers and sisters, like my mom and dad, right? And there is this togetherness. And so, again, I think that's how I started off the conversation, the power of film, right? And the power of visualization, right? And when you can see this couple, right, kind of coexisting and raising a child that's
who's got all that and relates to both of his parents in, subtly different ways. He speaks Spanish with his mom. His dad's kind of the authoritarian, trying to keep him on the right path. I remember there's obviously several shots in the film, but there's one where we meet Miles and he goes and he's trying to walk to school, to his new school, but he passes his old school, and you see him pass all his old friends, and it's I remember us talking a lot about that shot and how long should it be, and we shouldn't, and I remember we kind of went, you know what? When people see this film lit, and when they see the characters, the people that are in this particular shot of him at his old school, they've never seen anything like that in an animated film before.
They haven't.
And it's just a depiction of, a multicultural street in Brooklyn where there's a lot of black and Latino teens.
Yes.
And you look at it and it's like, wow. It's giving you, it's like there's several things in the film. It's like I get this vitamin that I had a deficiency in for like years and years and didn't really realize it as a grown man. And now I can look back to when I was a kid watching Speed Racer and Johnny Quest and all these things I loved with all my heart. But it's like it is a subtle difference when you see yourself and something that speaks to your own existence up on the screen that way.
And what was most important too for me, seeing these black and brown kids happy and enjoying themselves, right? And being like every other kid in
the
America.
Fullness of life.
Right, literally in the fullness and walking in their greatness and learning. But what's also beautiful about that though is then you begin to see a transition though too as well as one leaves that neighborhood, right? And then goes into the city and then goes to his private school. Right. But then also too the confidence in what it feels like to be the only one like in the room, right? And so as those of us who go into higher realms of education and we'll become the only ones in these big lecture halls, right?
And in our film it's interesting because there's plenty of other kids of color at Miles' school, but there's the the attitude. It's a different arena. It's a different, like, the set of expectations about how you're supposed to fit in or how you're supposed to act is kind of what his new school dramatizes.
Yeah, it is. And then how do you own your own agency?
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's what we're going through as a culture, right? As we get into identity politics and identity thing, it's like, how does oneself own your agency, whether you're female, whether you identify your orientation, your religion, like, how do you own that agency? And you guys did a fantastic job of moderating that for us and exactly seeing how that looks. And there's one shot, and I'm going to talk about something different that really I thought was powerful, and I want to know if it was intentional.
Okay.
It was the moment when Mr. Parker just passes away,
right?
And Miles is passing by a window with televisions, right? And you see the news anchor breaking the news, and then you see the visual of this white man, Parker, and then you see the shot coming in of this black and brown face, right? It's almost like this passing of the guard, this transition.
Exactly.
Can you talk to me about that scene? Was it as deep as I'm making it out to be, or is it just so happened?
Completely. I think that the fact of Miles, being Afro-Latino adds a subtext of, a larger cultural subtext of these people are becoming part of the conversation. Definitely. In the surface of the movie, it's as you said, the passing of the torch to this kid who feels this legacy and this responsibility being placed on him and wondering if he can live up to it in the moment.
Yeah.
So
I was right.
There's definitely multiple levels.
I kind of know my thing. And before I let you go, I just have to ask this question about you, because I really advocate in the entrepreneurship realm. And in particular, as people of color, our first touch points in entrepreneurship is usually our barber. But we never really see them as business owners.
Very true.
We just saw this as a thing they do, as a job.
That's right.
But when you get older, you recognize, like, oh, snap, like this is entrepreneurship. And so I partner with the Academy of the Summit that you were able to participate in, and I intentionally make sure, so it was about careers behind the film industry that you don't see. And so I intentionally make sure I have a black and brown barber that is there. And what I want to show the kids from South Central Los Angeles and out in Atlanta, New York, and possibly London, is that if you are a barber, if you just change the name from groomer, day rate that you can get from a $25 haircut to $25K a day rate, like on setting, what that looks like. I know you were a muralist at some point, right? Or you did some dabbling in mural work.
I painted one. So if that counts, I'm a muralist.
Right. But can you talk to us just a little bit about like how one, because there's so many are talented and sketch artists and who can just draw and doodle what Miles was doing with the name badge, just doodling, how one can transfer into a job like a storyboarding and that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It happened to me. I mean, I drew all my life, and I know there are thousands and thousands of kids like that. And it really is a case of being persistent, of learning. The biggest thing is to learn how to get the access. What's your point of access? For me, I literally, through word of mouth, you can get little jobs, and I stumbled into finding this agency that repped people who did what I did. So a lot of it is just digging. And for kids or young people now, they've got the internet, man. When I was coming up, I didn't have that, but there's so much information out there now. There's so many tutorials on YouTube. There's so many director's commentaries. There's so many artist technique, video series. There's all this information, a wealth of information available now that if you want to know how to take the next step, there's going to be some way to find it online for sure. That's amazing. Then from there, the other thing I've noticed in my career is if I just kept going and was determined and pushed forward and let people know what I wanted to do, if they saw me working hard, they saw me being sincere about it, invariably somebody else from the creative field would come and take me under their wing or give me some advice or give me a contact. So if it's something you really want to do, if there's any way you can reach out to somebody or find someone who does what you do and they can see that you've really got your heart into it, some door is going to open.
Peter Ramsey, Academy Award winning Peter Ramsey, thank you so much for your time. For the parents out there, and for the young adults who just heard that, if your kid is out there doodling, drawing, sketching, maybe one day they can become an Oscar-winning director too as well. To make sure you support their dreams, they may become the next Peter Ramsey. Thank you so much for your time. Best wishes, brother.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Close like Starsky and Hutch, stick to clutch. Yeah, I squeeze 3 at your cherry M3, bang every MC easily.
Take that. Oh, hey, feeling impossible.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that snack, man. And what a fantastic conversation we just had with Peter Ramsey. Award-winning, Oscar award-winning director Peter Ramsey for Spider and the SpiderVerse. It was just a fantastic conversation, really about representation and how art and films really make a difference in communities and to individuals. And it really helps individuals own their agency. And I couldn't think of a better person to really pair Mr. Ramsey with than my next guest, who is a commissioner of the Department of Cultural Affairs here in New York City, who really understands culture and really understands the impact of culture and what culture is and really what culture means. And so I just wanted to just go ahead and do a deep dive with him. And let's just get started. Commissioner, welcome to the Mike Muse Show, man.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. You had this fascinating journey to me, especially coming from the director of the Queens Museum, right? And for those who don't know, they should know, but Queens is one of the boroughs here in New York City. I think Brooklyn gets a lot of shine, right? And I don't think Queens gets shouted out enough in songs, Commissioner. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's...
We have a couple of rappers.
A lot of folks come from Queens.
Like
50
Nas, Remy Ma.
Also, you got Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong.
Yes.
A lot of great artists are from there.
The museums are there too, right? Isn't the Louis Armstrong Museum?
Fantastic. Beautiful museum. You've never been there. It's his house, and it's exactly... there's the bed where he died on.
Wow.
This hasn't been touched since that time.
Is that in East Elmhurst?
It's in Corona.
In Corona, okay, all right.
Right next door, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was close by. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure if you come to New York City, make sure you get a chance to check out some of those sites as well. Just don't always go to the big museums.
That's right.
We have some other things. And so, you being a part of right on the ground, right on the community, why was it important for you to integrate? Because I know what you did at the Queens Museum and really engaging the community, right? Why was that important for you and the intentionality of it? Just the same way I talked to Peter about the intentionality of making Spider-Man intentionally multicultural.
I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons. We're in Queens. It's the most diverse place in America, arguably. Although Brooklyn is catching up, as they represented in the film. But we had this situation where we need to connect with audiences. And one of the things we had to do is to find the best talent. And the best talent was a very diverse group of folks in Queens. So we hired community organizers on our staff. We hired folks that spoke a lot of different languages. When I got to the Queens Museum, there wasn't one person in the upstairs staff, aside from maintenance security, who spoke fluent Spanish.
Wow.
We're in a Spanish-speaking community.
Wow.
The other side of the park speaks Mandarin.
Yeah.
So by the time I left, our staff spoke 8 languages, majority people of color. All of our programmatic departments were run by women of color who lived in Queens.
Wow.
All those things are important to me.
And why do you think, what I'm gathering for that is welcoming, right? Making guests and visitors feel comfortable, right? When there's people greeting them at the door who are reflective of them in their neighborhood,
right?
It makes them feel welcome because there is a classism associated with the art community, right? It's just a stereotype, whether it's warranted. We're not here to debate that question today, right? But we know that there is. Right. And so the comfort that it feels when you walk into that space, is that what you guys were going for?
Yeah, and that is absolutely important, that frontline staff, but also the people making the fundamental decisions at the museum. We did a diversity study at the Department of Cultural Affairs of the cultural workforce of New York City. New York City is 2/3 people of color. Our workforce in the overall cultural workforce of the city is 1/3 people of color. Wow. But it's actually much worse than that because the people making decisions, the single whitest job in the entire workforce was curators. And the least white job was maintenance and security. So those are important union jobs. I'm not saying anything, but I'm talking about, so it is the people greeting you at the front door. It's also the people making the decisions.
And especially the curator is important. And I have to be honest, and my audience knows that I'm very vulnerable when it comes to these moments. I remember I was getting a guided tour at LACMA a few years back. Yes. And the individual I was going to be meeting was a curator. And I knew he was a curator. And his name was Franklin Sermons. I'm sure you're very familiar with Franklin. And I remember calling him on the cell phone. And I'm like, hey, Franklin, I'm in the courtyard. And he says, I'm in the courtyard. And it was early morning and there wasn't a lot of people in the courtyard. And I said, well, I'm here. I don't see you. And he said, well, I'm standing right here. And I did see this black man in the distance, but I'm like, it's clearly not him. And I said, well, what are you wearing? And he said, I'm wearing blue jeans. And I said, oh my God, you're black.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was this incredible moment of one feeling awful about myself that I didn't even think that this curator could be black. But then I was excited immediately because the curator is black. But that goes to show, even in my adulthood, even at a point that I had been connected with the art circles, that I had yet to meet a black curator. And so the thought that I didn't think one could exist wasn't necessarily my ignorance per se, but it was just about representation, and what I had been exposed to thus far was not a black man. And so since then, Franklin and I have become like best friends, and he's a frequent guest on the Mike Muse Show, and I love Franklin to death, and his brilliancy is, but even that matters. So what you're saying, having people of color who are the curators and staff makes a difference.
So Franklin, is down in Miami, at PAM. Director at PAM, and by LACMA for the guest is Los Angeles County Museum of Art.
Thank you.
So Franklin, I used to be a member of the AAMD, Association of Art Museum Directors, and there were no black museum directors outside of the sort of, quote, ethnically specific museums. So great leaders like Thelma Golden, of course, at City Museum. But Franklin was the first, the first Jackie Robinson in a way of running a white institution as a black man. That's crazy. That's kind of first are just happening, right?
And recently.
Yes.
It's not like this happened like the 1990s, 1980s.
No, and Franklin's been around for a while. I've known him. He did a show at the Queens Museum. Yeah, wonderful guy.
I'm just saying that the fact that he's the first, right, in the 2000s is one of those things that is just unbelievable, which is why it's important, I think, for cities, right, to one, have agencies such as the Department of Cultural Affairs, but then to have a commissioner such as yourself who really understands what that means and what that means to a city. So as you began to lay out the vision for culture and affairs for New York City, which is the hub of the world, if you ask me personally, it's slightly biased. Right? Like when it comes to that, did you feel the weight of that responsibility amongst other things that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I felt the weight of responsibility. I thought it was an opportunity. That we got to use the entire talent pool of the city. So we started our diversity initiative. We did this, survey, but we also then did a cultural plan. We were out and about. We had hundreds of meetings with 25,000 people. We kept hearing over and over again about, we need to open things up. So when we announced that, we also said we are going to, there's 33 institutions that are on our property where we're the landlord. That's called the Cultural Institution Group. It includes the Metropolitan Museum, Brooklyn Museum, Staten Island Museum, Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, et cetera. And we said to them, okay, we're going to require you to develop diversity, equity, and inclusion plans with goals, and they're just working on them now. They're all working on them. There are very few institutions in the city who have adopted those plans, board-adopted diversity, equity, and inclusion plans. And it's not just diversity. It has to be equity and inclusion. So really about who makes decisions, how people are included, not just superficially diversifying your workforce.
And even that, but even getting access to the museums, right? And for myself, coming from Lansing, Michigan, speaking of first of things, Lansing, Michigan just got its first art museum about 5 years ago, as I'm sure you're very familiar with the Broad Museum. Eli Broad was a great responsible for that to come into place. And I'm so thankful that I had parents in the school system where we did field trips and we went on family vacations where I was able to be exposed to the arts at a young age. But I began to think about it. Me and my mother went when they opened up the museum in Lansing, and I just had this thought about what children are missing growing up in the city for so long who didn't have access to art, right? And what that means, right? And I don't think people really understand how important art and culture is in the development and shaping of a youth.
I would tend to disagree with that. I think people do know that. And we did a survey of New Yorkers. We hired Sienna and they did a survey. And it was crazy. 97% of New Yorkers feel that arts and culture are important for their community. And when we met with the people from Siena, they said nobody agrees on something like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
But let me ask you a question then.
Yes.
And the sample pool, though, that's New York City.
New York City.
Right?
The full oh, yes.
But I'm talking about nationwide.
You're right.
Right? So this is a national show nationwide. And coming from the state of Michigan, clearly with Lansing only having the museum that is there, there isn't an only other city that has museums is Grand Rapids and Detroit Institute of Art, which is fantastic. But Michigan's a very large state.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
no, Mike, I'll take my disagreement back.
Yeah. And when it comes
nationwide, it's a problem. Yeah.
It's a serious problem because I don't think people really understand when you get outside the scope of New York City and Los Angeles and a lot of your cultural hubs, how art really has an impact, right?
Yeah.
And because it provokes thought, it provokes conversation, it really holds a mirror up to society. But then too, also seeing representations of multiculturalism hanging on the walls.
Yes, indeed.
Right? And what that means.
So I mean, we're blessed also with a city where our museums are 150 years old, like the Met and Natural History. But I think also, what's on the walls? You know, if you walk into a museum, I was talking to a young African-American woman who was just, saying that when she was able to walk into the Brooklyn Museum and see Kehinde Wiley on the wall, or
oh my God,
like that. That was these kinds of moments. It's like the SpiderVerse, but to see that in these staid big institutions, it's very meaningful. So by the way, what's been on stage recently has been much more diverse. So in the theater, you got everything from Hamilton to all the other stuff that's going on. So I think it's beginning to be true, but we're very interested also in the other jobs in the arts and cultural sector, not just who's on stage. Because if you imagine as a kid getting involved in art, you're thinking, I'm going to be a ballerina, I'm going to be a musician, but there's the tech jobs. The people sitting in this room with us today have jobs in arts and culture. And those jobs need to be diversified as well. So we're working on that.
How do you think we can get that word out there a lot? Because I'm really big on entrepreneurship behind the camera. As you heard me talk about the partnership I have with the Academy right now, we're really focused on the behind the camera talent, right? And what that looks like in different careers that you have. How do we begin to amplify that conversation, right? But the other key component to that is how do we get parents and communities to support what that looks like, right? Because, if you're a child and you say, I want to do stage management or stage production, right? So a lot of parents, again, who didn't grow up in these cities with arts and culture and say, there's no money in that. No,
I've heard this before.
How do we begin to change that narrative?
Well, I mean, so one of the things is we have various programs. We have something called CUNY Cultural Core. CUNY is 3/4 kids of color. Students of color, where our CUNY Cultural Core is paid internships in the cultural sector. I think when parents see their kids getting paid and having jobs and realizing that jobs are things like, PR or they're finance or they are, event coordination. These are real jobs with real benefits. Yeah. What the people, I was talking to a woman who works at NAACP and we were talking about that, the problem of the parents saying, don't become an artist, it's an insecure, low wage, future. But she said to me, these are same parents who would say, become a community organizer is fine. These are low paying, you get jobs in the arts are just as good as community organizing jobs. And those are jobs that are meaningful and are meaningfully understood to be giving back to the community. So how do we get to the point where those arts jobs are seen that way as well? So we have all these different kind of pipeline programs that are trying to address that.
Commissioner, and I'm also very upfront and honest too about things I just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so are there commissioners of arts and cultures? Is this a typical job? Is this unique to the city of New York? Is it across the country? And can you talk to us about what the impact has been on the city, right? In terms of the citizens of the city, right? Not from so much policy, but really having a focal point, an agency in the city dedicated to arts and culture, what that means for our citizens.
Yeah, so I mean, there are commissioners of cultural affairs or equivalent of that in many different cities across America. What you don't have is agencies the size of what we have in New York. So our agency has a budget, and we also spend a lot of money on capital projects. So for example, the Museum of Natural History or the Studio Museum are building new buildings. We are putting tens of millions of dollars of capital money into that as well. So our budget for this year is $200 million. All that money's gone out to the field. We have a very small staff. Our actual administrative budget, $6 million. So $194 million going out as grants to the field. That's much, much bigger than most other cities, but there are other cities, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, that really take it seriously. I will say Boston has their first commissioner of cultural affairs.
That's awesome.
2 years ago.
That's awesome.
Just happened. Yeah, this is very important, I think, for cities. Yeah.
It is. And what ways do you see the positive impact for the cities? And the reason why I'm asking that is my audience also know that I don't just enjoy getting on a soapbox and just talking about things, right? But really getting down to the fundamentals in terms of action, right? And so for cities who are listening who may not have an arts and culture commissioner, right? Or may not have an agency, can you talk a little bit about like the impact that it has, aside just from the capitalization and the building of the construction and the support from that, but how it impacts like a city?
So that's a very, very good question. Not that all the others have been good as well.
I try, Commissioner.
Okay. No, because you have to make the case. And you have to make the case essentially to the government and to the people of your city that it's worthwhile spending money on art. Because people, that's a frill. So there's two things to say. First of all, it's very good for the economy in New York City. This is without doubt. Study after study has made the argument that tourists come here. Half the tourists come to New York City out of the 65 million we got. Half say arts and culture is why they're coming.
Wow.
Number two, there's a social impact. We did a big study. University of Pennsylvania came. For 3 years, they studied New York City, and they said low-income neighborhoods that are rich in arts and culture are healthier, safer, and have better school outcomes. So there's social impact and there's economic impact. We have made that case for such a long time because we have a commissioner. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about my predecessors.
Yeah, there's the office.
Yeah, the office. And our city council believes that, and I believe that people of New York City believe it. When I go to events, I'm constantly saying, "Is this a good way to spend money? Your money, you taxpayers." And everybody says yes. I mean, people believe in it in New York City. I
mean, look at the outcome of a Peter Ramsey, right? And to where he is, right? And again, I always use myself, as an example. I went to college for engineering, right? And even when I was in high school, the arts was never recommended to me as a career. It was always go into these safe careers where you'll be guaranteed jobs, right? And I had to be honest, even in college, when people were telling me they wanted to be an actor or a dancer, I would laugh. And I would say, there's no money in that, right? Or you want to make film? Like, nobody makes money in film, right? Except for those one or two people, right? And really didn't understand. But then as I got a little bit older, I started seeing the impact of art. And I started seeing how people can really make a good living in art. And then I began to see how it moderates and really changes narratives. And if you look at it now, pop culture really is on the scale of politics. And politics really is on the scale of pop culture, right? And it really amplifies conversations and it really helps change and moves the needles like on policy, even to the point now, Commissioner, I think back and say, of course I have no regrets because I wouldn't be where I am today. But I'm like, I would love to have majored like in art history. Right? Because I love to run my mouth, right? And I love to give my opinions, as you can tell. And so I think like art history, just be able to pontificate on meanings of things. I'm like, how incredible that would have been if I would have been exposed to that, and to see that I could have been a Franklin sermons. No,
and there's a lot of thought that the Mellon Foundation has been really working on it, specifically around art history. And they have a new head who's an African-American woman. But they've been sort of saying that exact thing. We got to get a more diverse group up into art history. Look, by the way, I used to be an artist. I have an MFA from Hunter College. So I was going to be an artist. It was a very hard economic run while I was doing it. But I, transitioned into this other kinds of jobs in the arts.
And even so let's even talk about like some of the other jobs. I mean, because now we're out here, parents are going to be listening, right, to our show. There's young adults who also listen to our show too as well, who are either thinking about a career, or parents are at their crossroads now, who are thinking about how to support their children going to college. Commissioner, we have a lot of teachers who listen to our show, so as they begin to teach their students. I'm thinking about like in these institutions meaning museums, there are departments of education, right? And I'm thinking about Sandra Rose Dumont over at the Met. I'm thinking about Naima now, who's going over to LACMA now, right? Talk to us about those roles and what does that mean, like education within museums, right? Because again, behind the scenes.
Yeah, so there's every museum has an education department, every theater and music group as well. So they're usually filled with some very full-time staff, and they have a whole crew, and then they have teaching artists. So the teaching artists, it's a very good way for artists to make a living. They often get a very high hourly rate. And those are in charge often of sort of public programming, but also the school. And so that in New York City, every school has a partnership with a cultural organization. And that partnership, that we just found that out, by the way. That was a great statistic.
That's awesome stuff.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that is.
And we fund a lot of that stuff through Cultural Affairs, but a lot of the funding comes through the Department of Education. I will say, I wanted to throw in one statistic.
Yeah.
Since de Blasio took office, there are 444 more full-time art teachers in the public school system than they were when he started.
That's amazing.
So you got to have that partnership. You got the schools, you got the institutions, and then, millions of, so we have 1.1 million students in the public school system in New York City. The average year, more than 1 million visits are made to museums by the schools. So the schools are contacting or being contacted with and collaborating with those education departments and exposing kids to art. But it's important, again, to also expose them to that person, that educator. And by the way, that's a pretty diverse group of people. That's a job. Think of that as a job, not just the person who painted that great painting on the wall. Think of that. Those jobs in education, those are very progressive. Often the leaders in terms of diversity are those education departments in these cultural institutions. Yeah, Sandra Jackson Dumas, the woman, Naima Keith, the women you're mentioning, these are some of the great leaders, both African-American women, just to be clear. Those are some of the leaders. I will say that Sandra Jackson Dumont was the first, I believe, African-American vice president of the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Which is amazing.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
I am such a fan of hers.
Yes.
And what she represents. And then talking about owning agency, right?
Yes.
And how she projects and how she thinks about inclusivity within the art space. But I think, again, just having Sandra at the Met, just saying there is a Black woman at the Met, is just it just makes you rock back in your chair, right? I'll never forget first meeting her. Just in the same way I was talking about getting introduced to Miles in the movie Spider-Man, right? And so I was like, oh my God, like I'm really drawn into this animation world now. And meeting Sandra, I was just like, wow. Okay, let me look at this Met differently, right? Let me look at the landscape of where art and culture is in New York City, right? Like maybe there is now a place in a space where I can exist. But also, though, Commissioner, it's all about having circles, right? Because let's be honest, right? Like diversity inclusion, a big part of that is making sure our circles are connected enough to be able to get into these places and spaces, right? And so when we are now have that access to that, we can now help pitch, right? And then we can help ideate, right? And we can be a community partner, as you're saying, community organizer. For myself, can be a community partner to these institutions to help make sure that there is an emphasis on cultural identity, like within these places and spaces. But having those there is really key to that. Commissioner, as we conclude the conversation, I mean, there's so many. Oh, yeah, yes.
I just got to throw in one point.
Yes.
All Franklin, Sandra, Naima, they all came through Studio Museum. Let's not forget about that. So there's an incubator, a powerful incubator. And by the way, we're the landlord.
Yeah.
The city's the landlord. We help incubate that space with the leadership of, Larry Sims and Thelma Golden.
Yeah.
That's not a mistake. That is an intentional incubation of talent.
Yeah.
And we need more of that.
I think that's key is intentionality, right? But again, it's having individuals like you who recognize that, right? That intentionality is so key. Just a couple of directions I want to go with you. I feel like I can keep talking to you all day. So I hope we can make this a regular conversations, right?
Love to,
Conversation with the commissioner. How then do our listeners advocate to our politicians to get them to understand the role of art and culture in our society and to advocate for an agency within the city department?
I mean, I think it's grassroots organizing. I think people need to show up at small scale political events and make sure that your elected officials understand that it's meaningful to you. So I don't know. I mean, New York City, we have community board meetings, so whatever the equivalent of that is, like the smallest scale of political organization. And then I think it's very important for people to make sure that on the questionnaires around, when people are running for office, it's like, what is your position on arts and culture? Do you believe in arts and culture as an important aspect of this, of your candidacy? So I think that, it's just so you got to let the elected officials know that it's important to you.
And the next thing in terms of parents, I keep coming back to this parent thing. So I think that's just so big. And, you and I were talking before we came on air just about representation. I just remember listening to like Jay-Z song Picasso Baby, where he shouted out all these incredible artists of our time. Thinking about Kanye West when his album came out, Dark Twisted Fantasy, and he had ballerinas on the stage dancing to a backdrop of like hip hop. We have Swiss Beats and all that he's doing at no commission, right? And what he's doing at Art Basel. So it's really talking about like this representation and how, to me, we are in this era of parents who are hip hop. And as you know, as well as I do, hip hop transcends race, class, culture, and identity. And so parents now of the hip hop generation are seeing these artists highlight these incredible artists or styles of artistry. I can only hope that now when a child comes to parents and say, Mom, Dad, I want to be a ballerina, right? Yeah. Or I want to be a writer, or I want to be an actor, that our parents catch them, and say, yes, you can, versus sidetracking them, right?
I agree.
What do you say to parents, right? Not that you're the end all be all to coaching parents, when a kid comes up to them and say, I want to be in the arts in some form or fashion.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, every time you invite somebody like Peter Ramsey onto your show, that's a role model right there. Here's a very, very successful guy that followed his passion into the arts. But I want to say that there are good jobs in this field. But I give myself an example. If you're talking to a parent, I said to be an artist, it's so valuable to think creatively. It's good for all kinds of other employment. So you might find yourself commissioner of cultural affairs. So you thought you were going to be an artist. But I think that we're in a situation right now where people need to be creative. That's the future, right? That's what jobs are about, is creativity, because machines are going to be doing almost everything else. Yeah. So where are you going to find the future of employment, I think, is a lot of it's in the arts.
I love how you're going there, right? Because I'm a big fan of like machine learning, artificial intelligence, AI, and I do a lot of conversation on this show about the future of work. Right? And what does that look like? But even when you really think about it, when you think about those individuals who are creating these algorithms, right? It's something about artistic, right? It's a very artistic mind, because you have to see the flow chart, right? And you have to see the decision tree, right? And sometimes you have to map it out. Sometimes you have to sketch it out, right? And sometimes you have to go into that third dimension, right? In order to see, how it is, right? And so I think there is sometimes an argument, and I'm on one side though, this argument, I think I might be leaning to coming off to the other side, STEM versus STEAM, right? And for the audience who doesn't know, it's STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, and then STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, right? And so coming from my engineering background, I'm like, no, STEAM. Yeah, it's all about STEM, right? There has to be this separation. And I still believe there are things that need to be advocated for separately in terms of arts. Sometimes arts is the first thing to be cut, in school budgets, et cetera. So we have to advocate for those differently. But I do think there is this intersectionality of technology, right? Sure. And the art community, in particular how our minds work, right? And how we see things sometimes linear and nonlinear, and being open for that, right? And so...
Right. I'll say also, just to be clear, my agency is not just arts. So the science institutions, we have some fantastic thing called Urban Advantage, which is using our museums, but our science museums, to help kids in the city understand not all, 50% of middle schools in New York City are participating in that program at Museum of Natural History, the Hall of Science in Queens, the zoos, the gardens. So we're very, very pro STEM as well, I will say.
Oh, that's what's up, Commissioner. I'm learning. I'm so happy to hear that. I feel like this is a dream job.
Yeah. It's I've always said that, my previous job at the Queens Museum, as a museum director, you're raising money. Yeah. As a public official, you do get yelled at in public a fair amount. True. Yeah. So, it is a dream job. It's fantastic. There's no other job in America I want. It doesn't make it easy.
Of course not. Nothing is easy, right? I just hit this whole intersection of politics and pop culture, and so I just think having a commissioner where a job like this exists, where you literally combine pop culture and policy together, is just like a dream, because for me, this show is a dream, right? Being able to intersect pop culture and politics and policy and have fascinating conversations with people like you and Peter Ramsey at the same time. I call myself a curator, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not Franklin status level, but in my own little way, I call myself a mini curator. And so curating this conversation with you today, Commissioner, has been fantastic. I hope you look at my curatorial ability favorably.
Indeed, yes.
And you'll give me a good art review tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Commissioner, how can people reach the agency if they have more questions or information?
Well, we're on social media.
Yeah. If you give your Twitter handle, and maybe people can say
so it's at NY Culture.
Perfect.
Is our
Twitter handle.
Twitter
and Instagram.
Instagram. And so it's NY Culture, not NYC Culture, NY Culture.
NY Culture.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn more about New York City's culture and cultural affairs and the arts and what we're up to here in New York City as you come and visit, summertime is coming up, it's spring break season, all these cool things are coming up. Make sure you hit them up on Twitter and Instagram at NY Culture. And as always, you can reach me on Twitter and Instagram at I am Mike Muse, M-U-S and Sam E. And always, of course, you can hit us up at SiriusXM at SXM Insight. Until next week, peace.
You gotta choose a side. You gotta choose a side.